Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being here today. I also want to thank you for meeting with us when we were in Poland recently. We had a very good discussion. In fact, I've been there twice in the last month. But I will say our delegation, bipartisan, came back resolved more than ever that we need to help Ukraine win this war. And it was very bipartisan. And I also want to thank you, sir, and the State Department for your efforts bringing Trevor Reed home to his family. I've met with his parents many times. I want to thank the Special Presidential Envoy for Hostage Affairs, Roger Carstens, and U.S. Ambassador John Sullivan, good friend of mine, who were really critical to bring him home, securing his freedom. His parents are very grateful, sir, and we thank you and your team for that. We're currently witnessing the largest invasion in Europe since World War II, my father's war. And as you know, the brutality is shocking. We just passed a war crimes bill, the chairman and I on the floor, bipartisan, calling these out for what they are and holding Mr. Putin accountable as a war criminal. But the images of corpses littering the streets after Bucha, hands tied behind their backs, bullets in their heads, reports of mobile crematoriums being brought in to cover up the mounting body count and cover up the evidence. A pregnant woman covered in blood being carried out of a recently bombed maternity hospital, for God's sakes. Tragically, both she and her baby, as you know, did not survive. But these are Putin's war crimes, and he must be held accountable. He fancies himself as reclaiming the glory of the Russian Empire, yet his legacy will be that of a war criminal. And yet, in the face of these horrors, President Zelensky, I think, and the people of Ukraine have really inspired the world with their bravery and their determination. And I appreciate the fact, sir, that you went to Kyiv with the Secretary of Defense to meet with him. I think that was very, very important. And I'd love to hear more about that visit. But, you know, they're standing in front of these tanks, risking their lives to fight for their freedom. And against all odds, they're holding off the invading horde. We were told 4 days this would be over. We're now into the third month. Mr. Putin has underestimated the Ukrainian people, I think to his own peril. And that's why it's critical, as you know, to get Ukraine the weapons they need to completely defeat Putin's invasion now. I appreciate the efforts made to get these desperately needed weapons into the hands of Ukrainians once the war started. I wish more of these weapons had gone in before the invasion and not after. I know there was concern about provocation, provoking Putin. The president, in my view, sat on critical weapons packages in the spring of 2021 and again in November of 2021, all the while Russia amassed its massive troops on the border. And as the battle for the Donbass heats up, the United States and our allies are only just now training Ukrainians on vital heavy weapons, including MLRS artillery, air defenses, armed drones, and tanks. As President Zelensky put it, he said, you know, it's unfair that Ukraine is still forced to ask for what its partners have been storing somewhere for years. If they have the weapons that Ukraine needs here, we need them now. If they have the ammunition that we need here and now, it is their moral duty, first of all, to help protect freedom. And then he said, help save the lives. This would help save the lives of thousands of Ukrainians. As I've often said, the world is watching. This is an historic time, and history will judge us by how we respond and whether we learn from our mistakes. I will say the narrative has gone from it will be over in 4 days to we need to help Ukraine defend themselves, to I was very pleased to hear you and Secretary Austin say Ukraine can win. And I think the narrative has changed with the American people as well, as they see the horrific images coming out of these atrocities. And I know with Mariupol, once the dust settles, we're going to hear, I think we just scratched the surface, unfortunately. This unprovoked on Ukraine has opened the world's eyes to the threat, though, of other malign actors, primarily China, and to our partner Taiwan. At the Winter Olympics, as you know, Putin and the Chinese Communist Party General Secretary Xi announced their unholy alliance, no limits, they call it, compact against the United States and NATO. I think it was not a question of if, but when. And I think Putin made the calculation based on what he saw that this was the time. And we're very worried that President Xi may make the same calculation. I hope with Putin's miscalculation, however, and his lack of success, if you will, he will change that paradigm. But they just reached a secret military agreement between the Solomon Islands, China did, which took us all by surprise. These are the very islands that my father's generation fought and died for to liberate during World War II. And now it's under the thumb of the CCP. It's clear that they're preparing for some sort of conflict, whether it's by military or otherwise. And I think the United States must act now to prevent such an invasion. We must also make sure our defense industrial base is embracing innovation to make weapons more quickly using 21st century technology. In short, our arsenal of democracy needs rejuvenation. And that may be for a longer discussion, sir, that we could have. But the slow pace of these weapons that the chairman and I sign off on not going out raises concerns. Turning to Afghanistan, Republicans and Democrats alike expressed alarm over the administration's failure to prepare for the fallout of the withdrawal. We were promised that this would be planned for all contingencies, but in the end, 13 soldiers died during the evacuation. Hundreds of American citizens and tens of thousands of Afghan partners were left behind. I will be releasing an interim report very soon outlining what our investigation has discovered so far. And I look forward to discussing that report with you, sir. But at the end of the day, we're in this together. And it is the interest of the free world to defeat the evils of Mr. Putin and all of our foreign nation adversary countries. And with that, I yield back.
It's now my honor to introduce the Honorable Antony J. Blinken, who